The following review is rated G for gushing. In a world in which SUVs are taking over, one car will emerge from the crowd, like finding an exit with a Chick-fil-A. One car will stand against the rising tide of SUV dominance, like Mel Gibson in Braveheart before the drinking and anti-Semitism ruined his career. One car will
probably be responsible for killing off all other cars, honestly. Why? Because the new Civic is so good at being a car that if you had to pick one model to carry the torch long after all of the other ones had faded into obscurity, it would probably be this one. What's going on, everyone? Jax here, and today I have the all-new 2022 Honda Civic. So the new Civic is here, looking very much like its older brother, the Honda Accord, or kind of a, really boring Audi A3. But I don't really mind. I wasn't one of those people who wasted a lot of time complaining about the previous Civic's looks, especially considering that the Hyundai Elantra exists. It certainly wasn't as traditionally handsome as the Nissan Sentra, or alluring in the way that the Mazda 3 is. And it makes sense that Honda kept things simple here, with sort of like upscale and clean creases, attractive LED lighting all the way around, and nice looking but pretty safe 18-inch wheels. Is it gonna cause a spit take every time it rolls past you on the road? No, of course not. But it's also not gonna make you wanna gouge out your own eyes the way the old Nissan Versa did. Under the hood is Honda's 1.5-liter turbocharged four-cylinder, making 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque, all running through a CVT automatic transmission. Honda has sort of quietly emerged as the king of CVT transmissions, mainly because they make them livable without self-destructing like they were in a Nissan or something. Power is acceptable here, enough to get you up to speed without a fuss and make the driving experience sort of, pleasurable as opposed to being a burden. Remember, this all-new Civic is no doubt going to spawn its sort of like higher performance variants. A new Type R and SI are in the works. So this powertrain is more than capable of providing what sort of most sane people would consider necessary propulsion. And it complements what is an utterly sublime driving experience. So here we are behind the wheel of the 2022 Honda Civic, which is kind of a hotly anticipated car. I feel like the current gen Civic just been winning all the awards forever now. So how do you top that? Well, you give it some pretty damn good driving dynamics for a start. This steering, I'm in normal mode right now. This steering is exactly how the normal mode of a car should drive. In fact, this car as a whole is how the normal mode of any car should drive. It is such a good balance between mainstream and just a little bit of sporty firmness to just give you that little extra confidence, and that's exactly how the steering feels. There's no slop, there's no numbness, there's no slowness. It's fast enough off center and builds in sort of heft, and that's just how this car is all around. Just that right balance. It's all about balance. And I don't mean like actual weight balance. I mean balance of priorities. Similarly, the throttle calibration is just fine for an everyday driver. The brake pedal feel is great. It's firm and accurate and very precise. I won't say that it's kind of like a little wooden. It doesn't feel like super like, ooh, like, you know, sporty, but it's got a great sort of pressure mitigation. It's firm and confidence inspiring. And if you really lean on it, it's gonna bring you to a complete stop. The CVT is good in the sense that it doesn't draw attention to itself. That's the best thing you can say about a CVT transmission. I know they're not everybody's sort of favorite type of transmission, but to be honest with you, Honda is doing them better than just about anyone else on the market. And this CVT is about as good of an example of a CVT as you could hope to have. It's got all the virtues, and the only real drawback is a lack of passion. One of the things I really like about this car is the ride quality. It does that sort of Honda magic of being firm, that sort of Germanic way, that it feels capable, it feels confidence inspiring, but it still somehow manages to take the edge off of sharper impacts. The body control of this Honda Civic is just insanely good for an everyday sort of, well, it used to be a compact car. It's not so compact anymore. But for what it is, the body control is exceptional. We're about to turn down the handling road, which is fantastic because there is a landscape truck with a tree, towing a tree right in front of me. So we're gonna take this left-hand turn a little slower than usual, let that guy get wherever he needs to go with his tree. So on the handling road, if you're new to the channel, this is sort of a little windy road near my house that has a mixture of crappy pavement with some bumps and dips. And this initial part has some very sort of pockmarked pavement. It's not unpaved, it's just lots of little bumps and dips and stuff right here in this section. And the Civic is able to control itself over that. For a car with sort of a firmer suspension, it's just insanely good. Coming around the first corner here, body roll is kept well in check for a car of this sort of, you know, mission statement. It's not meant to be a crazy sporty car. Some of these bigger bumps, still the lack of head toss. Like, I was in the Kia K5 and the Hyundai Sonata the past couple weeks, and they're very cushy, but they're very soft, very softly sprung. This is a little bit firmer. It's damped more firmly, but it is equally smooth somehow. You get a lot more sense of what the car is doing, but not in an unpleasant way, more of a sporty kind of way. I don't know of any company that nails that sort of ride handling balance like Honda does. Yes, remember, I'm a bit of a Honda fanboy when it comes to this sort of thing, but it's well deserved and well earned. Also, let me take a minute to point out a couple of these interior things from a driving perspective. One is, this wheel is just such, it's like perfect size. It's not like especially good looking or anything. It does have kind of this fun cross-stitching pattern, which just literally seems to exist to be kind of fun looking in this top trim. This is the Touring trim. And the thickness of the rim is great. It's got the perfect hand positions. Everything about this interior is highly functional and sort of dedicated to the act of driving, but in the most useful way possible. I've got an awesome driving position for someone who's 6'6", and the back seat still is pretty roomy in that sort of Honda magic kind of finding space where it doesn't seem to exist sort of way. I can nearly sit behind myself where the seat would be for me in a Honda Civic. That is phenomenal, considering how much I like the Mazda 3, and 1/3 of me couldn't sit behind myself in a Mazda 3. In fact, a large woodchuck would have trouble sitting behind me in a Mazda 3. What I like about what Honda's done with this interior is that everything feels familiar, everything feels comforting, everything just falls immediately to hand. The AC controls are ultra simple and they move with a satisfying heft and clickety-clack. The sort of knurling on the knobs looks great. I like how Honda's kind of making an effort here. Everything about this interior is just functional, usable perfection. And while the new design might not be the most eye-catching thing in the world, the visibility is excellent in every direction. It feels more sort of like upright in here than it really looks on the outside. On the outside, it's, you know, it's not super sleek. It's not doing the 4-door coupe thing. Germans with your stupid fake coupes.
That doesn't make sense.
It's not trying to do that, but like, it's got really bright, airy cabin. All right, so what are the downsides? Well, here's one of them. Ready? It's kind of slow. For 180 horsepower, it's got 177 pound-feet of torque or whatever. It doesn't necessarily feel like it. It wasn't unpleasant winding the CVT out. It does kind of hide the annoyance of that, but it's not super fast. It does maximize that sort of turbo torque at lower RPMs, like when you're pulling away from a stop. It doesn't really feel slow in like 0 to 30. But if you punch it like that from 0 to like 60, it's not super fast. Also, if you want to go manual control, if you put it in sport mode, it does keep the sort of fake gears more aggressively. It doesn't help a whole lot. I do think it has a meaningful sort of increase in sportiness because Honda knows what they're doing. The steering gets a little bit heavier, the throttle gets a little more sensitive, the transmission's doing a better approximation. The shift paddle though, I don't love the shift paddles. I had the Toyota Corolla hatch, and I thought that CVT with the shift paddles did an amazing job of approximating sort of a traditional automatic or dual clutch type of box. I mean, it was still slow as bejesus, but like, it really felt like there was like an automatic transmission there with those paddles. This doesn't really feel like it. I would just leave it in regular mode and drive around and just enjoy the competence of this overall experience. So what's like the main takeaway here of the all-new 2022 Honda Civic from a driver's perspective? Sophistication. This car drives and moves and feels from behind the wheel like a much more sophisticated car. There's a reason that I recommend Hondas to almost anyone when they ask me, especially like friends and family and stuff, what kind of car should I buy for just sort of general pleasure of ownership? I usually say Hondas. Now, there have been a couple drawbacks in the past couple years, like Honda, for some unknown reason, the past 5 years or so, their infotainment has been just utter trash, just absolute garbage. But this new infotainment system is light years ahead of where they were, which we'll talk about in a second. But for just general enjoyment, general purity of purpose, ownership experience, I'm gonna buy a car, I'm gonna hold on to that car, and I wanna form a relationship with that car. I wanna actually like that car. You can't really go wrong with a Honda. And this new Honda Civic has something about that Honda joy and that Honda magic that I don't think Honda's been missing, but it just hasn't all been there. It's been like 90% there. And in this Civic, it feels a lot closer to 100% there. I'll leave it at this. I like being behind the wheel of this car. And for something that you're gonna own and drive every day, there's not really a higher compliment that you can give it. At 29 and change, the interior of this Honda Civic Touring looks great. With simple and straightforward ergonomics, soft touch materials in all the right places, and comfortable and supportive seats. I don't know, I've said it before, I don't know what kind of witchcraft Honda employs with their seat design, but these seats are just superb for someone like me. They have just the right amount of bolstering, and to be honest with you, I was a little nervous that there wasn't like a significant lumbar adjustment. They don't really have lumbar adjustment, and I got a messed up back, and somehow they support me better than seats that have lots of lumbar adjustment. Thank you, Honda. You've got a hexagonal pattern spanning the dash and sort of integrating the AC vents, which is super cool. You've got a super easy to use 9-inch infotainment display in touring trim. The lesser trims get a not 9-inch display. That's very, very intuitive and much better than the old Honda system, which was like worse than the dollar menu at a Captain D's.
No! God, please, no! No!
Also in touring trim, you get a fully digital gauge cluster, which looks a lot like the one in the all-new Acura TLX and the all-new Acura MDX. So, joke's on you, Acura buyers. I spent $29 and got one in my Honda Civic. Oh, as well as, for the first time in a top trim Civic, a 12-speaker Bose audio system that, you know what? It sounds great. I say it like every review where they're talking about the stereo system and they're like, oh, it's got Mark Levinson or ELS, digital audio, crazy. Look, at a certain point, it just sounds good to me. I don't know. And this system sounds good. It's great, it's fine. There's dual zone climate control, wireless phone charging, a power moonroof that's called a moonroof and not a sunroof because apparently there's a difference between the two, but who cares? Oh, and wireless Apple CarPlay, which is always appreciated. It's function over form without sacrificing quality and comfort. It's like Honda distilled the formula for peak car interior, like most functional, usable car interior, and then put it into one of its most popular models to deliver to the masses. And because this is for the masses, let me talk about safety for just a second. This 2022 Honda Civic comes with Honda Sensing, which is my favorite safety suite among mainstream brands. In touring trim, the Civic has it all. Adaptive cruise control with traffic jam assist and low-speed braking, as well as all the lane-keeping centering features that go along with it, which in Honda's version work incredibly well. It also has all the collision mitigation features that you would need or expect, you know, such as forward collision, pedestrian recognition, and all that. And for the first time in a Honda Civic, it has rear seat side airbags. It's one of the most comprehensive systems on the market. And I know I call myself an enthusiast dad, and the dad side of that equation means that I have a family that I want to keep safe. So if safety is one of your sort of buying priorities, then I would urge you to not only check out this new Civic, but check out Honda Sensing in all of Honda's products. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It is without a doubt one of the best, if not the best, safety systems on the market. Look, I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. The new Civic is great, and I wasn't kidding when I said it could probably wipe out all other cars in the coming SUV future. It's big enough for most people, even my tall family. It's a complete pleasure to drive, and it'll likely be faultlessly reliable. Remember, when I had the Kia K5 GT line a few reviews back, link in the description for that, of course, which was a great mid-sized sedan in many ways. But for nearly the same money, this new Civic is nearly as large, drives better, has a much nicer interior with a few more bells and whistles, and a more well-rounded, comprehensive set of safety features. In fact, this new Civic is so good at being a car that I actually fear for my beloved Honda Accord, which I consistently tell people is the best mid-size sedan that you can buy for the money. Sure, you could argue that an Accord could be spec'd even more lavishly and you could spend more money on one for a more powerful engine, but remember, there are more powerful versions of the Civic coming as well. So, I mean, are there any drawbacks to this gush fest? Well, I mean, sure, the new Civic isn't perfect. Wireless Apple CarPlay sometimes had a mind of its own and played or didn't play at its whim. The auto lock feature was a little hyperactive from time to time, and when I went to open the trunk, it would sort of beep incessantly at me if I hadn't locked the car. Not really sure what that was about. It's probably user error, my bad. And even though this car costs less than 30 grand, I still think in a top spec touring trim, a surround view camera shouldn't be out of the question. However, these are relatively small gripes. This is a stupid good car, particularly for an enthusiast dad who wants a daily driver that won't break the bank and isn't so horrible to drive it makes him reconsider his very existence every time he gets behind the wheel. And on that note, I have a wonderful and terrible thought to end on. So bear with me. If I were to buy such a car, a reliable daily driver that I needed to kind of spend under a certain amount of money on, this would no doubt be at the top of my list. Most likely this would be my choice. It's much, much roomier than a Mazda 3, nicer and more fully featured than a Toyota Corolla, and it's significantly better to drive than the Nissan Sentra. So there's that. But unfortunately, you just know that this positively excellent car platform is going to inevitably spawn an equally excellent small SUV. Guys, thanks so much for watching and thanks for being a part of this channel. I really appreciate it. If you're not a part of this channel, make sure you like and subscribe, and welcome. I would love to have you here. I thoroughly enjoyed the all-new Honda Civic. I am, full disclosure, a bit of a Honda fanboy. I've owned several Hondas. I definitely have a Honda bias along with my Mazda bias. But when it comes to kind of plunking down my own money on things, I would probably definitely lean towards Hondas. And this new Civic really just sort of encompasses all of the reasons why that is true. It's a really, really fantastic small car, and if you're in the market for something like this as your daily, everyday, livable transportation, do yourself a favor and check out the Civic. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So until next time, everyone, ride safe, drive safe, and I will catch you in the next review. All right? Peace. Weatherman, you are horrible. I'm gonna be wrong at my job every single time. How is the wind coming from this direction now? I literally turned my back to it. Yeah, just a random gust of extreme wind. Why not? And a truck driving by. It's missing front bumper, rear bumper. Most things. Why are you cruising up and down the various parking lot rows? And why are you doing the one right by me when I am the only one here? God, I hate people sometimes. Good Lord. Is this like garbage pickup truck day at the park? Why does your F-150 even sound like that, dude? It's not okay. Yeah, we get lucky here with this absolutely perfect lighting, courtesy of the hurricane storms rolling in, which means that I better go film the talking head part, because things about to get ugly around here. When are they going to repave this road? How many times can you just fill these potholes in? And at what point do you fill so many potholes in that you just have repaved the road?